Welcome to In Search of Catholic School Excellence, the show where we spotlight the programs, people, and practices making a real difference in Catholic education today. If you're a school leader striving to build a community of faith, excellence, and innovation, you've come to the right place. Each episode brings you ideas that are working, stories that inspire, and new possibilities for your school's mission. Let's explore what's working and what's possible. Welcome, folks. We're here for another episode. This week, joined again by Becky Wong, and we're talking about alumni and alumni engagement. As we're sitting in this fall festival time, it makes me think that here's a great opportunity where the school is doing something really cool, and likely our entire community is invited. But what have we done with the alumni, and how have we been able to engage them and to, let them know that we're still here? And so that's the basis for our episode today. Thank you, Becky, for joining us.
I know. Thank you for inviting me again. And the whole idea of having alumni as part of our community is not just, sending that newsletter off and just asking for donations, or that's the only time they hear from us. We want it to be a positive interaction, and it needs to be constant. Where, how many times, Thomas, have you gotten something in the mail? It's like, oh, here's a newsletter, here's the envelope. I'm like, I don't read it anymore. Maybe I'll take a glance and go, oh, what are people up to? Here's the donor list.
I think there's two sides to that, though. One, some of the schools that I've been to are regularly sending me things, right?
Mhm.
So I get things, maybe 4 times a year. And then other schools send me nothing. And so, when it comes time for me to make my donations, whether that be a monthly donation, a yearly donation, whatever it might be, the schools that have asked me are the ones who get it. And because I've had time to think about, do I want to contribute at all to that school? And does that fit in the budget? And so I can decide when I'm going to donate ahead of time, right? And I think it's something that the colleges and high schools do a really good job of, but the elementary schools do a very poor job. And then what happens is you have a situation where they come out of the blue and ask you for like $1 gazillion to rebuild whatever. And all of a sudden, they're back in your life asking for money, and you're nah, because it's, what have you done for me lately? And that's a terrible way of thinking about it, but you can't put it on the alumni to be the ones to have this original thought of, gee, I wonder what's going on with the school. Let me go find out. Oh, let me donate all my money to them, right? It's not going to work that way. So we have to find ways to be consistent, as you're saying, be consistent with our communication with them, and hopefully that it's not always asking for money. You can always include a donate button at the bottom of the email, or you can always include, a paragraph saying, or the same paragraph even, please help us with our whatever initiative. And that's all fine. But if the only time they ever hear you is for a fundraiser, then you're probably going to fall on deaf ears.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So we definitely have to look at 3 things when we're talking about building our alumni community. Is first off, like managing the data. Where are we getting our alumni? And a lot of times what I notice is like at the beginning of the school year or at the end of the school year, when we send an email out with our newsletter, I get a big long list of people unsubscribing, and that makes me sad. All of a sudden they're like, oh, we don't want to hear from you anymore. I'm like, oh no, why are they unsubscribing? I guess they don't need to know, this is the first day of school because their child graduated already. But how do we, keep people engaged and not just unsubscribe? The second thing is like, how do we increase alumni engagement? Like, what are we offering in terms of value? Like you said, what have we done for our alumni lately? And is there different ways we can recognize our alumni? And lastly, like infrastructure, like, hey, now we have a database. Who's managing it? Who's maintaining it? Where's this database? Hidden or not hidden, or who's in charge of it? Just so a lot of times, like, hey, we have all these kids, they're still part of our school family. Once they graduate, do they leave us forever? Of course, we want to hear from them. And my husband grew up in the city, you know, he, during the pandemic, and unfortunately the school closed in the last 10 years. But during the pandemic, what's cool is that there was a Facebook group and there was a meetup of all the alumni. They're like, hey, join us just once a week, meet up. It's like, these are what people are looking for. You know, they graduated like 30 years ago from elementary school, but they're still staying connected. So, how are we doing that? I would say, first step, start with our graduating class. You know, right before graduation, what are we doing? You know, we always find out like what high schools they're going to, and can we collect their emails, and not the school email, but like a personal email? Have their parents update their contact information, maybe even have like a alumni parent group to keep them connected, and put this somewhere. You got to have a database, you know, start with that.
I like that. I like that. Let's pause there for a second because thinking about even nothing else than you have this current graduating class coming up, right? And so, you have the opportunity before they graduate to set all this up. So what if we we not only help them transition to, maybe it's just the parents' email for that moment and you collect their student emails at this later point, but what if you set up in April or May an event in September or October to get that class back together, have like, movie, pizza, ice cream social, or whatever,
Oh,
something
yeah.
simple, invite all the families back and just like have a night. Like this is the class of, this will be 2026, the class of 2026, party, have them get together, share stories, whatever, and make that a recurring thing that
Mhm.
happens with the eighth graders every year. Not only do you keep those kids and get their new email addresses, but you also keep the parents. I love the idea of the parent alumni group, making sure that has some sort of purpose. And that purpose isn't necessarily to raise money for the school. It's to keep those folks connected because if they stay connected, they're going to support whatever it is. And that support might be financial down the road, but it might also be showing up in numbers when you have an event or a memorial or something like that. It might be helping with donation drives for the service projects that the school is doing, whatever it might be. Those people are still part of your community. But I love about that, let's plan this ahead of time and let's set up structures so that this can continue. And then you can say, well, now we're going to invite all the alumni for I don't know, trip to Great America, theme park type thing.
All
Or
right.
we're going to have, the alumni, and of course they're going to pay for it. This is all it takes is a little bit of energy to plan. And at that point, those kids are old enough to get themselves there. So you don't have to worry about transportation, right? So, it's there's lots of little things you can do, but if you set up that system before they graduate, then the parents won't unsubscribe because they know it's something special. And as we get further along, that I think we talk about consistent communication, it's you're not signing them up for the same school newsletter where it talks about like what's pizza lunch on Friday and like what uniform day. Like they don't want to hear any of that. That's why they unsubscribe. So if you already show them like within that first weeks of them graduating, welcome to the alumni group. We're so happy that you've, made it thus far and here's what you can expect. And you can share something with them, remind them about the event and so on and so forth. I think it becomes very simple if you set up ahead of time. I love that idea. We should push more schools to do that.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of, you know, even the week after graduation, I don't know if you noticed this, but a lot of times I'll see our eighth graders or our graduates come back that following week. Get the whole school involved. Let the teachers know, like, hey, we're going to have a few volunteers or just graduates coming back the following week. What are some activities that you can, you know, get them involved? So it builds in and reminds our graduates like, hey, you're welcome to come back, whether it's next week, next year, 5 years down the road. You know, I know, you know, they don't have school. What else are they doing? Hanging
Yeah.
out at the local mall. But I notice a lot of them come back the following week. And, you know, there's lots of things they can help out with, whether it's just like reading to kindergartners, helping take down bulletin board, putting up bulletin board, maybe running, we'll have like field day, have them help out with field day or some sort of school-wide activity. And it reminds our graduates that they're still part of the community and not, hey, you graduate, out you go, right?
Yeah. And you can go a step further with that. I mean, I know when I was a teacher, the eighth graders would graduate the following week. I'd have some of them come back and help me, like, clean up the classroom or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Then you can also set the precedent. Maybe there's a summer program. Okay, these are going to be the junior counselors or the counselors at your summer program. Like you
Oh,
just build
great
in the
idea.
fact that like you are still a part of this. And if you think forward, to events, some of the other episodes that we have on this podcast will talk about how the alumni are participating in these programs, but whether it be an art thing or a dance thing or a sports thing, bringing back the alumni for that, and they know that they're welcome to those things. Having a section at mass for the alumni, like, once
Right.
again, the church is too big for your population, therefore let's invite folks, right? And you can set up these little things that make them feel like they are still a part of the team, and not it's not like pretend, they are, they should be a part of
Right.
your community, right? And you can have all these little touch points along the way. That's another great example of inviting them back for little things.
Oh yeah, and other ways to just be consistent, having them involved. It's like I was thinking of like, we're always asking alumni to give, whether it's like money or time, but also like, hey, what have we done for alumni? Like during graduation, there's usually an announcement of like, hey, there's scholarships or grants for like, the top athlete, whoever the top student in the class. But what if we had something where every year there's a grant or some sort of foundation that donates or provides a scholarship to our alumni, like an active alumni? Because what's great about our student population is a lot of them go to private high schools and private colleges, you know, and our top students we're encouraging them, we're supporting them, and like, hey, what if annually we have some sort of announcement or some sort of event? Could even be simple as announcing a newsletter like, hey, so and so was awarded the scholarship from our foundation. Our alumni foundation supported the student, they're going to whatever nice high school, you know. It keeps our alumni engaged, like, hey, I want to be part of the alumni, group. Maybe I want to go to Stanford or MIT, and down the road continue to have this scholarship to support. Could be one, could be, two, half a dozen, and it gives our alumni reason to stay connected, especially our younger alumni. Just kids in high school, once they go off to high school, you don't want them to disappear. You want them to keep coming
Mhm.
back and stay engaged. Like those are the kids we want to like reward and say, hey, come help us out, come join remain in the community. Wouldn't it be so
Yeah.
great? I don't want our kids to think like, oh, I can't go to those really nice colleges or out of state colleges because they can't afford it. If we set up an alumni foundation to support them, then we open up possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, even if you can't afford to put together something like that, although that's very reasonable to be able to hand out even two, right?
Yeah.
And you could have it based on loyalty or whatever. But inviting them to be a part of a youth group, right, which keeps them part of the parish, keeps them part of the school. Like, there's lots of little things that you can do to keep them in line. I think that we talk about being consistent, and that's communication, but also with those events. Like, if you have these fall festivals that we were just talking about a little while ago, they are the pretty much the same time every year. So that's an event, right? A lot of times folks will have the night before Thanksgiving as an alumni event because everyone's back in town. So you have your alumni event that Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. That's another simple thing, but it has to be the same. Like, you got to
Yeah.
have the same thing every year. In the Salesian world, January 31st is, biggest feast day. And so everybody shows up for mass on that Sunday, whichever Sunday's around the 31st. And oftentimes there's some sort of gathering on the 31st itself for alumni. So you can take advantage of your feast days and just plop, maybe there's one or two events that are being very consistent, and you've got your four special newsletters that are going out talking about how alumni are doing cool things, how the school is doing cool things. Maybe you're highlighting businesses from the alumni, that, like, hey, we really appreciate the support of this business all these years. You should go check them out to get your next used car. Whatever it might be. And they don't have to turn into commercials, but just the fact that, like, let's highlight, who's doing what. And I think these are all very simple. They don't cost a whole lot of money. And I think it's even more important to stress the informal, right? I mean, you can have
Mhm.
an alumni event that is, you know, this isn't one of those yearly things, but a movie comes out or there's bowling night or whatever happens. We're just going to meet at this theater and go to this movie at 7 o'clock. Like, it's an
Oh,
alumni event. So simple, right?
Right. My
Ice
class
cream
people went.
socials are so easy. Like who doesn't like ice cream? I mean, come on, right? Come to the parish hall. We're gonna have an ice cream social. All alumni are welcome, and whether you charge them for that or not, like a bucket of ice cream is surprisingly cheap. And there's probably a donor out there who would be willing to toss the $100 to cover all of the supply, right? So in any case, being informal but consistent about some of those things, or consistent about all those things, I think is really important.
Yeah, and then like there's other opportunities. You mentioned like, hey, some of our alumni own businesses. Like, what if your school had a career day? Invite your alumni because
Yeah.
you can have your teachers speaking, but they're all teachers, but just having variety and get our current students like engaged and like, oh, they're young, but it gets them into like, hey, that's possible because that is a student who came through our school and this is what they're doing. Invite them to career days, STEM day, have mentoring opportunities, whether it's, and a lot of times, like even last week, a few of the high schools were talking to our elementary schools or they'll always send an alumni, a graduate of the school. They're like, hey, this is how you apply to the school, that this is all the great things. Have reunions and remember to invite your teachers and even coaches because every time an alumni comes in, they're like, oh, is so and so still here? Right? So just having the whole community engaged in these activities and it doesn't have to be specific to alumni, but just reminding everyone like, hey, you're welcome to come in.
Yeah, events like that are pretty easy, especially if you rotate through. Like you think about, the class of, you know, 87 and the class of, 92 or whatever
Mhm.
it might be, and to be able to find, different people for your STEM day, your career day, or whatever, the alumni speakers, you can rotate them through, right? You can find different people in different classes so you can make touch points. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to kind of dig that in. Initially, of course, if you're putting that together out of nowhere, it's a lot of work. But once that's set, it's very easy to go back and you just have to get started. You don't have to have this perfect, all encompassing list. You just have to be able to start and say, okay, we've got these 5 people, we've had them out to these events. Okay, let's find another 5 people for the
Mhm.
next one, and so on and so forth. It's not so time consuming.
Yeah, and a lot of it doesn't even have to be in person. I personally like in-person events so that you can,
Yeah.
talk and engage, but then setting networking events up for, current students, recent graduates, or even maybe our alumni from 10, 15, 20 years ago, like, hey, if you have an opportunity, why don't you talk to our alumni base and like find people? A lot of it is just like word of mouth. It's like, how do you know who to hire? What better is to talk to someone with the same values, someone from the same background as you. It'd be so cool if, we had an event, alumni event, networking event where, some people might be offering jobs. Hey, Salesian Academy. We're always looking right for alumni where we're like, hey, we know that they grew up the same way. We know they have a good background. And just to find out like or find people as opposed to someone just off the street applying to a job at your company. But lots of opportunity or even mentoring opportunities, like if you're available and you're like, hey, you're looking to set up internships for younger people in high school or colleges, like where better to look. Speaking of where better to look, newsletters. There's lots of things we could do with newsletters as opposed to just asking for donations. Like I've seen in some newsletters, and that's the first place I look is like, where are they now? Like, oh yeah, remember so and so? Just having like just updates. Always remember to include, a could be a Google form, could be a QR code. Like, hey, how do you update your information? We set up a few school websites, and there's always an alumni section where people can fill out, their new contact information, graduation class. But how great would it be? It's like every alumni newsletter, there's a section like, hey, update your information, tell us more about you.
Mhm.
And it's not just a giant list of donors. It's like people love hearing about like, hey, what's your new job or where are you now?
I think that's important. It's easy too. I think one of the things that people say often about this is like, oh, it's gonna take so much work.
Right.
if I bought a t-shirt from a website, like they have no problem staying in contact with me for like years to come, right? And their team of people is smaller than the team that we have at schools. Now, I get it. Schools have a lot of things going on and it can be chaotic, but a lot of this can be automated too. So, you know, taking that time to put that list together, to get that newsletter going and to include these things, is far more worth it than a lot of the busy work that we're doing. I don't want to get us in trouble. That's saying that we're end up doing a lot of busy work, but there's like this is important. It's important to keep your community together, right? And it's important to take that time, and it doesn't take much. Of course, it is work, and of course, it is hard work. But it's if the local yogurt shop can stay in contact with me for years to come after one sale, I'm pretty sure that somebody who I spent 10 years with would have the time to stay interested in me, right? Without asking always for, hey, come back and buy another yogurt. Sure, you can ask for that, but it's got to be a little bit more than that.
My favorite automation is like Google Calendar, just to remind me, like, oh, hey, what if we all set our Google Calendars like, hey, graduation, like week or month, like in May, set a reminder, send out a congratulations email to like all our alumni who will be graduating from college. How great would that be?
Yeah,
It's
or
like,
their birthdays. We have their birthdays.
oh yeah, that's
You can automate an email to all of your alumni. You can
yeah,
automate
that's so true.
a Facebook notification for their birthday. Hey, Saint Amazing Academy really appreciates you. Happy birthday. That's so simple.
Wouldn't that be so nice? You
So
got a
simple.
happy birthday, congratulations. Maybe someone started a family, right? Congratulations, just little things. They're free, all free. Something we should do more often is acknowledge alumni contributions. They do donate money, and a lot of times we have an office person sending a note saying thank you for your donation, receive whatever it is, it's tax deductible. But what are we saying to send thank you notes to our alumni who volunteered at the fall festival? How nice is it that we do get volunteer alumni because they know how our fall festival run. There's less directions that need to be given, and they can even help you run it. But all that time, have someone send a quick email saying thank you for coming to the event or contributing your time. Just little things like that, all free.
Yeah, Christmas cards.
Christmas.
You know,
Oh, yes,
ki-
Christmas cards.
kids can write Christmas cards, or it can even be the printed one. Like the
Oh,
fact that,
yes.
and not to mention, once again, spending a little bit of money. Of course, we like the personal message. That's how
Mhm.
you do this like really well. But there are so many companies that will just take your list, and you could upload your list and hit send, and they will all get a card in the mail that has your little message on it. Thank you from the school. We're grateful that you're a part of our community. So simple, right? And secret sauce is don't send Christmas cards, send Thanksgiving cards.
Oh, wow.
They
That's a
don't
new
get one, right? You
for
don't
New
get one very
Year's.
often. So those are small things. So before we run out of time here, let's jump into like how we do this, right? So we've now just discussed why you should do it and maybe some
Like
of the
what
events
issues?
that you can do. But let's get into the nitty-gritty because this is the part that I think that most folks trip up over is, well, you get a volunteer or a parent who is going to take this on for you and it gets built in some sort of platform and then somebody forgets the password to that platform or it gets locked down and you just struggling to keep this thing alive. How can we build a system that will allow us to keep adding to it and to be able to forever stay in touch with our alumni? That's the first question. And then secondly, what other tools can we use to facilitate this, right? So first thing we talked about developing an email list, right?
Mhm.
If we're going to send, just send quarterly emails. You don't have to go crazy, but send emails directly to alumni. And of course, you want to invite them to your Facebook page and all that other stuff. But we want 4 quarterly emails. So you're going to have some sort of email newsletter software, right? Ideally, that can be attached to your database. That database can be, something that's really built for alumni, or it could be as simple as a spreadsheet. But we need to get those names into an email list and to be able to stay in contact with them. So we're talking about 4 emails a year minimum, and ideally with lots of information, which we've already talked about. So, what are some of the ways that you've seen that work out pretty well?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I have an example of how it didn't work out well.
Well, let's start there.
Well, there's two things here. Who's in charge of your alumni relations? Like, who's in charge of it? It doesn't have to be one person, but I really recommend having a staff person. Like you said, if it's a parent or some sort of volunteer, the parent or volunteer sometimes goes away and where's the password? Who's taking over? That gets lost. So, definitely recommend having a school staff person. Doesn't have to be the principal, doesn't have to be the office manager. But what I do recommend is electing someone or asking someone who is an alumni of the school, like you. You're very involved at your school. Make sure it's someone that is part of the school staff so that there's protocol set. And think to yourself, do you have an advisory board? Is there a alumni representative in that advisory board? So one example is that in one of my schools before, we had advisory board and we did have a parent who was Salesforce. It was great. It was quite a process to set up, but the problem was that once that parent left and we had this great, very robust system set up with Salesforce, no one maintained it. No one even filled in the database. All that work was lost. So, like you said, we could even start simple. Could be a Google Sheet. For the websites we set up with the alumni database where alumni could just enter information, it goes straight to a spreadsheet. It's like keep it simple, put it somewhere, make sure it's safe, everyone knows about it, it's there. And then we're talking about you could be super simple spreadsheet or something fancy like a CRM, some sort of database, and just make sure it's maintained. You had a recommendation I never heard of.
Yeah. Before we jump into that, I just want to highlight one of those points you made. If you have, I mean, we love to have parents involved. We love to have volunteers. Even these alumni folks, they might work in these high-powered industries. In which case, Salesforce is a big part of their world. But Salesforce is something that you'd have a dedicated manager for. That's not going to be the kind of software that somebody at the school is going to just casually be good at. So it's important to think about, yes, we want to take advantage of the folks who are volunteering and offering their expertise, but we also always have to have the lens of, can we manage that if they're not around anymore? And people jump at the free offering from Salesforce, but that's just so that you get addicted to it, like anything else. So using something much simpler, I think would be an ideal thing. I think we do need to step up from a Google Sheet. Like that's, I think, too simple because it becomes difficult. But there's a lot of email campaign software that will manage your list for you as part of it, and so you can have everything in one place. You can send an email, you can keep track of these things. I think a lot of those CRMs are either inexpensive or free. And some of the things that we've used in the past, we've played with Odoo, ODOO, as far as a CRM goes. There's, things like FileMaker Pro and Airtable, which represent glorified Google Sheets.
Okay.
But then you can use those things in different ways and they can jump from there. And then you have the other end of the spectrum where you have these giant, CRMs, maybe not as difficult as Salesforce, but there's a lot of donation software out there. I personally like Little Green Light for this kind of thing. It's very cost effective, very easy to use, very lightweight. And so you could, excuse me, you can keep track of your donors, your alumni, and you can still interact with them. And it's a pretty easy program. And I want to say it's like $300 a year. So
Oh, wow.
almost nothing. So it becomes very simple to track some of these things. But getting into some sort of system like that, whether it be a free one or one of these lesser expensive ones, getting them in there and then, setting up those automations so that you can get your newsletter out, you can get your reminders out, all those various things. You can connect them to your Facebook page, your LinkedIn page, whatever
Mhm.
other page you have. And so you can publish in all areas at once. And I think that's where the real joy is, when you start to think about, well, I want to do all these things with these folks, but you're managing 6 or 7 pieces of software. So you can get, one or two that can do everything you want to do, and that they can publish to these other places. I think that's the real magic.
Oh, right. There's so many automations out there that we don't even know about. Just think of like, what's the pain point? Like, oh, having to send that one newsletter, but in six different places, especially with social media. It's like, hey, there's automation set up. We can help you with that.
Yeah, definitely. I know some people are pretty good at this kind of stuff.
For sure.
All right. So as we're getting close to the end here, I want to do a recap. But is there anything else that you want to share in terms of the alumni world? Things that we just want to make sure we get over to everybody.
Oh, it's just definitely staying communication, stay in contact. It's all about, building your community. Just it's all word of mouth, and it connects to all our other podcast topics. Talk about fundraising, admissions. Like, where are we getting all these people? And we don't have to get them. We already have them. They're our alumni.
Yeah. I would say the thing that, I mean, I'm already repeating myself at this point, but for me, the most important piece is let's get that list together. And if nothing
Right.
else, start with this upcoming eighth grade, right? You probably have 10 years of students in your student information system that you could pull that information from. And you could send an email to all those folks and saying, hey, we're starting, this is an example of this newsletter that we want to have for alumni. We're hoping that you'll subscribe to it. Like, you can't automatically subscribe people, but you can invite them to that list. And ideally, some of those folks will stay on. But I think the most important thing to start right now is figure out how you're going to manage your list, get it together, and figure out how you're going to manage eighth grade. Because here's your opportunity to get one class right. And you can take baby steps towards those other 10 classes, towards the other 50 classes that might still be alive. That's a daunting task. But if you can think about building the list now and how am I going to deal with the eighth grade, I think that's a great first step towards this. Lastly, just be consistent. There's some natural things. If you send 4 emails and invite them to 2 events, I think you're doing more for your alumni than you've ever done before. And those folks who've already got something robust going, you can probably take it a step further. But build it first. You're playing the long game. This isn't, you're not going to get 20 grand back from these people, immediately. And that should not be the focus. Your focus should be that they stay in contact with you throughout your life, their life. Like, it should all be part of this one community and they should feel connected to you. I've got schools who contact me all the time and I have schools that never contact me. And so I can see my behavior in relation to those different kinds of schools. And, maybe I'm giving more to one school or the other because it had a bigger impact in my life. But if there's no contact, I'm not giving at all. So, not to mention, am I donating anything, time, telling other people about it? Because if it's outside of my, out of sight, out of mind, then I'm not going to be like, hey, you should go check out this great school. Like, that's not going to be my first thought and be like, oh, there's lots of great schools. No, well, you got to talk about your school first. You got to have that pride. So let's
Absolutely.
keep them connected. So as we finish here, Becky, will you give us our reminders? What are the 3 things we have to worry about?
Oh, for sure. Build your database. Have them stay connected. Secondly, it's like increase alumni engagement. How are we inviting them back, right? And then lastly, like make sure someone's maintaining that database. Build your infrastructure? What are the processes? Keep it simple. I was just even thinking while you were talking about like, hey, using fancy software. I was like, my school used MailChimp. We categorized our groups, our mailing lists by class. At the end of the year, I automatically moved the eighth grade class into an alumni newsletter list. Those things can be automated, super simple. You don't have to build something out of nothing, it's already there, you know.
Yeah, keep it simple, keep it consistent.
Well, just get it started,
Yeah,
right?
get started.
That's
Yeah,
me think. Just start.
just start. All right. Well, thanks, Becky, again for joining me today and for sharing all these ideas about alumni. I'm hoping that some of the folks out here will listen to this and take some action. And then whether if they've got nothing out there or if they've already started some things, that hopefully they'll take another step forward. But I appreciate your time and we'll see you on the next episode.
Okay, thank you. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on In Search of Catholic School Excellence. We hope you heard something inspiring or something you'd like to try at your own school. please share this episode and leave a review to help others find us. To see how we can support your journey toward excellence, visit ilovemytechteam.com. Until next time, celebrate what's working and keep reaching for what's possible.